I hope you're having an amazing day. So today I'm going to talk about collection data type, right? So until now we talked about basic data type like integer, decimal, double, boolean, and then we talked about enums, we talked about objects, right? So today it's all about collections. Collection data types are very important. It plays a very important role because think about a scenario, right? When you talk about string, right, you can only assign one kind of value to a string. Now, if that's confusing, I'm going to show you in a minute what I mean by that, okay? So the first thing first, right? You need to have an org. You need to register for an org. If you haven't done so, please go and do so. And I assume that you already have an org. So that's an assumption I'm going to go forward with. And another thing is that I would highly encourage you to practice what I teach, right? Because it's very important you understand what I'm trying to teach, because just by watching video is not good enough. If you want to be a good programmer, Apex programmer, or any programmer for that matter, right? Any language you choose, you need to practice it, right? You need to know what you're trying to do with that, right? Just by watching videos is not just good enough. So, okay. All right. So let's get started, okay? So I've logged into my org, okay? Now I'm going to go to developer console as usual. So this is the gecko icon here, and go to developer console. So I'm going to tell you why we need collection in the first place, right? And then we're going to proceed with the collections, okay? So as usual, so let me close this one, okay? Close all. I'm going to go to debug, open, right? So as usual, you know by now where to go and what to do, right? Okay, right. So now think about a scenario. I have the string, okay? Say test, okay? So now if I wanted to assign a value, right? Okay, now in this case I can only assign one value to test, right? That is TTT. Now if I do say what will happen is that it will override the value of TTT with four twos, right? So that's not what we wanted. Imagine if I want to have these two values. Let's say, okay, let me give a better example, okay? Let's say I wanted to store name, okay? It's a string name, okay? Say I want to store name as, okay, David, okay? And I also want the same, I also want to store name as, say, Peter, okay? Now, what will happen, right? In this scenario, it will only store Peter because you've assigned David first, right? And then you try to write the same variable with Peter, okay? Now, other thing what you can do something like this: string name1 equals to Peter, right? This way it can store, say, Peter and David. But this is not a good solution. Imagine you have thousands of names, right? You can't keep on declaring 1,000 variables here, right? That is absolutely not a good practice whatsoever, because 1,000 variables, it is messy, it's rubbish, in simple terms, right? It's absolutely a garbage piece of a code. I mean, if I have to be blunt about it, okay? So in that case, the list comes in the picture. List, collection. Collection, think about a container, right? A container, or you can say a stack, right? Or you can imagine a book rack, right? Where you have different layers. So every layer let's say you keep one book, then second layer you put second book. So collection is something like that, right? So you put David in one layer, then you put Peter in another layer, and whatever names comes after that, right? So we don't have to have 50 book racks, right, for different books, right? So 5 books can fit in one single book rack. That's exactly the concept here, okay? So what we're gonna do is we have 3 collections here, okay? We have list, we have set, we have map, okay? I'll explain to you in a minute. So let's deal with this list, okay? Now, book rack, if you use the same analogy of a book rack, right? You can store in a book rack pretty much books. You can even keep your coffee mugs on it, right? You can also keep your stationaries on it, right? You can pretty much keep whatever you want. It's your choice, right? It's not only specific to books. The same way, list is not only specific to string. You can do integer, you can do decimal, you can do numbers. You can do Boolean, right? So what I mean by that, so let's start with the string, okay? The way you define it, right, or declare it, okay? So you define list here, okay? And this is a data type, okay? So what I'm saying is I want a list of string, okay? This is a data type here, okay? Don't get confused with this this bracket here. I'll explain you slowly. Okay, now, as usual, you know how to declare a variable, right? Data type and the name of the variable. So let's say the name of a variable as names, okay? Now, in this case, it's a little bit different, right? Because you have to create a list, because if it, unlike other collection, right? Collection is, think about a scenario, right? You have to, let's say, let me give you an example of the book rack again, right? You have to build a book rack, right? Right? If you wanted to have a single book stored somewhere, you can put it pretty much anywhere. You don't need a book rack. But if you wanted to have a, let's say, 50 books stored at one place, you need to have a book rack. So to have a book rack, you need to develop a book rack, right? So it's exactly the same concept here. You need to, just saying I have a book rack is not enough. You need to create a book rack, right? So you need to assign a memory to the list where you can store the variables value. That's exactly what it's doing. So you're going to do new, okay? So it will take a little bit of time. Collections are a little bit complicated when you're starting first time, but I just wanted to demonstrate what all data types we have. We're going to deal with collections later stage when we do integration side of things, okay? But just for now, just understand this, or keep in your mind that we have something called this, right? And why we need it. So, right, that's all I wanted to cover today. Okay, so now let's say I wanted to store David and Peter. Okay, so now it becomes very easy. So all you have to do, you have to add your name to the book rack, right? Think about a list as a book rack for now. So you're adding to the book rack, right? So how do you do that? So names dot add. Okay, so you have David, okay, and so you have add, so you're gonna have Peter, right? There you go. So now let's do system.debug to see what happens when we run it, because I wanted to show you the output of this variable names, right? And so we're gonna delete this one here, okay? And now I'll show you what happens, okay? Okay, there you go. So store Peter and David, okay? Now, let me do one more thing. Let's say I wanted to add Peter again, right? Let's say you have another name called Peter, okay? Okay, let's see what happens, okay? Oh, sorry, it's the names. Okay, and okay, there you go, Peter, Peter, Peter. Okay, sounds fantastic. It's a orderly way of storing your elements in a. That's exactly the official definition is, but for now, forget about it, okay? So keep in mind, in a simple way, that list is collection, right, in Apex, and so you can store multiple values, right? So this is a list of string, right? So similarly, you can also have list of integer, okay? So I'll show you how to do that. List of integer, okay? Let's say number, okay? So the same way you have to create, whenever you are dealing with a list, you have to create a list object. Now don't get confused with the object here, okay? So just for now, remember this is how you, if you're dealing with list, you have to assign a memory to the list. And this is the way you do it by declaring a data type, the variable, then you have to create it by using new, okay? So that's how it is. And now, same way, I can add number one, okay, I just put number one, okay? Number one dot add, so now in this case, you can't add any other data type, right? It's the same way, right? You have a string, you can't pass the number to it unless you convert it, right? The same way, these are list of numbers, right? So if it's a list of numbers, it's like a book rack, right? A book rack is meant for books. You can't ask people to go and sit on each rack, right? It will crumble, right? The same way, I mean, I'm sorry, that's a bad example, but you know what I'm trying to say. So you can't assign a string to it. So, okay, so let's say if I wanted to do, it will not work. It will crumble, right? It will give an error, okay? So I'm gonna clear this one, okay? The top one. So let's say, right? See, it gave an error, right? Because it's expecting integer. It's not expecting string, right? So you can do this, and this will work, okay? And then we go here, and let's look at the result. Okay, so 1, 2, fantastic, right? Pretty good. And you can also put 1, 1, 2, 2, right? That's similarly you can use for other data types, right? You can even use list of enums. You can use list of objects. You can use, you know, something like this. You can also use list of objects when you're not sure what kind of data you're getting, so, right? So I don't want it to confuse you guys. I don't want to complicate it for now. Just keep this simple, right? So this is one list. Now, what happens if you want your collection to not contain duplicate values, right? So like in this case, right, for instance, right, I have a duplicate value 2, right? Because 2 is coming twice, which is, let's say this is not what I wanted, right? What I want is that it should only store 1 and 2, okay? It should not store 2 again, right? Just to make sure that we only add and non-duplicate values. So in that case, we won't use list. We use the set, right? So we have something called set, right? It's similar like list, but the difference is that you can't store duplicates in set. And yeah, so let's do with integer, right? You can do like list, you can do, it's a similar analogy of a book rack. The only difference is that here you have to have a different books on each shelf. For instance, let's say you have a book of Harry Potter on shelf 1. You can't put the Harry Potter book on shelf 2. It has to be Lord of Rings or Hobbit, right? It has to be different, right? Or Avenger, whatever, right? So let's say if you put a book of Thor, let's say at level 1, you can't put the book of Thor again at level 2. It has to be Iron Man or Captain America, right? You get the point. So, so let's say number 1, okay? So I delete this one, okay? So I'll show you what happened, okay, here. So it's the same like list. You have to create it again. So because collections you have to create, they are different data type compared to the other ones, right? Other normal ones, okay? And so this is how you declare a collection variable and how you instantiate in simple terms, right? It's a very commonly used terminology in programming. And so assigning a memory to that variable, in other words, in very simple terms, right? Because you need to have a memory to store the values, right? Okay, so now we're going to do number 1. It's this dot add, okay, 1. Right, let's say number 2 dot add. Sorry, not number 2, number 1 dot add 2. Okay, now I'm going to add a number to number 1, 2 again. Let's see what happens. Will this work? Let's find out. let's close all of it. You see, it does not store duplicates, right? Because it's only store, you can put 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 again, but it'll only store once because it does not accept duplicates, right? Let's say we do 3, okay? And so what happens? You see? So that's what I was trying to say. If you do not want a duplicate value, you set in collection, right? So that's the basic collection for list and sets. Now we have a very interesting one, which can get very complicated, but I'm going to talk today only the basic aspect of it. That's maps, right? Now, I'm not talking about Google Maps. I'm not talking about the maps. Map data type is a collection data type, right? So it works in a little bit different fashion. It works in a key value pair, right? You have a key, you have a value. Think about a vault, right? Or a bank locker, right? You go to bank, you wanted to store your stuff in a locker, right? Usually you take a key, right? You put the key and the box comes out and you take the content, right? So the key is the way you access your content, right? It's a key, right? You have a vault. You use the key to open the vault, right? You have a key. You use the key to open the box. So content inside the box is the value and your key is a key, right? And the key has to be unique, right? So the idea behind it is that you can't use the same key to access another content, right? So it's like, or another analogy I can give you is like your key to the door to a house, right? Usually it's preferred to have a unique key for every house, right? Imagine if you have a master key, you can open pretty much every house. That's not what you want, right? Obviously, you won't be happy with that as well because the thief can get inside and take whatever they want, right? That's not what we want. So it's based on a concept of key value pair. Value pair. Okay, and so the way you define map is just map, okay? And you can define your key. So key value is the data type, right? So you can have, so first one is always the key, right? You can have key as integer. You can have key as a string, but to keep it simple, let's make integer. And this is a value data type, means the result you're expecting. Let's say I want the string result, okay? And say MP. It's always better to name, give a meaningful name. So this one is a little bit complicated data type. Bear with me. I'm not gonna confuse you. I try to explain you in a very simple way, okay? Now, what we do, so as usual, by now you know every collection you need to assign a memory. So the way to assign is new, okay? Map, okay? And you have integer, okay? And you have string, and you close this bracket, okay? This is how you declare a map, okay? Very simple, nice and easy, right? So this integer is your key, right? That means the key should be of integer type, right? And string, that is your value, you know, whatever string you want to store. You can also put the other way around. Sometimes you want your key as a string, but please make sure that key should be unique, right? What I mean by that is that map will not accept the duplicate keys, right? You can't put one, then one again, right? So let's do this one, okay? So MP, okay? The way to insert the data to the map is a little bit different than list and set, okay? So you're going to put, right? Now you're going to do 1, and you're going to put, hello world, okay? And then mp dot put to right, whatever, system dot debug mp, okay? Right, let's see what happens. I'll explain to you in a minute what I'm doing. So you see you have hello world and 2, okay? So So what I've done, right? So I have added two values to the map, right, with the key. Okay, it's like saying I've added, or let me change this example here. So let's take an example of two houses, right? House A and house B. Okay, so let's say I wanted to add two houses to this map. Okay, so how to add it? We need first of all a house, right, which is house A, house B, and then need key to each house, right? And it's a general assumption that key to each house will be different. Okay, so that will be put. So we don't use add here, so that's the difference. And now it will be house A. Okay, and let me put this. Come on. And we're gonna put mp dot put, and we're gonna put 2. That's the second key. That's a key to the house B. Okay. All right. Now when I run it, sorry, I need to put this sign. When you run it, so you will get something like this. Okay. Now, what's the difference here? What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna change my mind, and instead of 2, I'll put it as 1. Okay. Let's say for whatever stupid reason, house A and house B decides to share the same key, which is bizarre, but things happens. Now, see what happens. You see? So, what did happen now? Where did the house A gone, right? So, as I said, right, maps do not accept the duplicate key. So, when you try to do this, right, you've added a house A to map with the key 1. Then when you try to do that again, so what happened was that map assumed that, oh, okay, you are the same guy with the key 1, right? So they give access to the key 1. So and instead replace the house A with house B, because the key is same, right? So it assumed that you no longer need house A, so you are moving the key to the house B because maps will not accept the duplicate, right? Now if I do here back, I'll get my house A and house B back. So now you might wonder, oh, this is similar like sets, right? Yeah, it's similar like sets, but the thing is that sets are not key value pair, right? You can't add key value pair. If you wanted to have a key value, then you have to use maps, right? And maps are pretty useful. You can even do complex stuff. I don't want it to confuse you, but just to give you a glimpse what I meant by that. So you can actually do map of map, right? You can do integer, and you can do something like this. You can do something like that. Even you can do map and map of map, right? Depending upon how complex you wanted to have your data type, right? So maps are very powerful. I've used, I can tell you the data type I've used. This is something like this I've used, a map of a list of for complex operation. So I've used something like this for one of the stuff, because there was no other alternative I could have gone for. So maps worked for me, and I wanted to sort out a lot of things, and sorting works very well. So I have to implement a complex stuff. So yeah, so maps is very useful, right? And so please don't get overwhelmed thinking, oh, this is too complicated. That's not my intention. I'm saying what I'm trying to do here is just to demonstrate the power of Apex, the things which you can do. So just remember one thing, right? I know you might get overwhelmed if you haven't seen this before. List, if you wanted to add, collection, right? Think about an analogy of book rack I gave you. You have 50 books. You can't store one book in one box, right? You need to have a book rack, right? So that's where collection comes in, right? If you wanted to store non-duplicate books, right, then you use sets. right? But if you wanted to have a key value, right, where you need to access to a house using a key, then you need to have maps, right? That's all it is, right? So this is the only thing I wanted to cover today, data type. So next time we're going to talk about if-else statement, right? This when to use if-else statement. This is one of the basic or foundation of any programming language, right? See, think about this, right? Programming is like writing a story, or in other words, you're talking to a computer. The quality of code, right? Think about yourself as a storyteller, right? You know, do you want to be a bad storyteller or you want to be a good storyteller, right? So if you want to be a good storyteller, then you have to learn the fundamentals and use it efficiently, right? The programming is an art, right? It's a skill, right? And not everyone can become a programmer. I'm afraid to say that because people think it's very easy to get into programming. That's why we have a lot of horrible code out there because people assume, oh yeah, code, I can code it, right? I can Google, I can copy paste. That's not how it works. You have to understand the foundation, and yet you have to be passionate about it as well, right? That's one of the things I always say, right? Programming is a skill, right? If you're a Salesforce admin, if you wanted to do Platform Developer 1, right, then I would highly encourage that you understand Apex. It's very important, right? Cool. That's all I wanted to cover today. So I hope you have a great evening. Take care. Bye-bye.